welcome to episode number 3 of the Doctor Stoppage podcast. We've got Keelin McNamara, myself, Tanaay Shah. We're here to talk fights and some news and the top 5 of the week once again. This week we had a headliner with Viera and Tate last night. The prelims were so-so, a bunch of decisions. I think Pat Sabatini was really impressive, the Philly boy in the feature prelim, and he pretty much dominated Tucker Lutz for 3 rounds. So we'll just move on from that. We'll go to the first fight of the main card, Davy Grant versus Adrian Yanez. I thought that fight was fantastic. They got fight of the night. The judge who scored the fight 30-27 in favor of Davy Grant was on some drugs that I'd like to try. But I thought it was an awesome fight. I'm a big fan of Adrian Yanez, one of the biggest prospects in the UFC coming from Dana White's Contender Series.
Yeah, absolutely agree with what you just said there tonight. Obviously, fantastic to be back for number 3. Hope everybody enjoyed number 2 as well. First of all, what in the holy hell was that judge on, by the way? Because that was never a 30-27. In fact, I scored a 2-1 for Adrian Yanez.
Absolutely.
But I'd really love to know what psychedelics that judge was on, because I'm with you. I will happily try them as well, because he must have been on something else. Yeah, this was a really, really good fight. It lived up to what we said it would be. You know, Davy Grant is a really, really tough fighter. Brought it to Adrian Yanez for all 3 rounds. I just think Adrian Yanez was a bit too good. His counter-striking was clean. His boxing was on point. And even his wrestling at points was very, very good as well. So the fight didn't surprise me. It went very much the way I thought it would. I did think it would be a unanimous decision. And if we're being honest, it probably should have been a unanimous decision as well. But either way, hell of a fight. Always been a big fan of Adrian Yanez. And it's probably on to Sean O'Malley, it looks like, at this point for the boys. So very happy for Adrian Yanez. Credit to Davy Grant and credit to both guys for a great fight.
Yeah, I thought that fight was awesome as well. Davy Grant honestly did a really good job staying busy and making it look like he's doing a lot more than he was actually doing.
Yeah.
Like he would throw spinning stuff and kicks and elbows and back fists and things like that. Plus he landed a few, so I'll give him credit for that. And he was really trying to get the win. It reminded me of the Max Yair fight when it was standing. Obviously, there was a lot more ground and grappling stuff in the Max Yair fight. But it was like Yair throwing the fancy stuff while Adrian Yanez, who's Max in this scenario, was landing the clear punches and the boxing and things like that. And Davy Grant was also chopping at Adrian Yanez's legs, but didn't seem to affect him too much. So fantastic performance by Yanez. Good on both of them. They deserve that bonus. And Sean O'Malley seems to have found an interest in Adrian Yanez. He called him out. And I do like how Yanez responded as well. He's like, I'll fight him, but I mean, that guy just keeps talking and talking. He has never fought a ranked opponent. And they'll bring the heat. I think that will truly determine which one of those Dana White contender guys in the bantamweight division emerges on top, because they both have such good striking, boxing, whatever you want to say. And it'll be an awesome fight. That's if O'Malley can get past Paiva in December.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point, especially to bring up about Sean O'Malley. Assuming that Sean O'Malley gets past Raleigh Paiva, which is a tough fight in its own right, Yanez will absolutely be the toughest fight that O'Malley's had to date, in my opinion, because he's not only facing a guy who can throw back, but he's facing a guy who can really throw back and who can throw hands and kicks on his own merit. So I hope O'Malley does win his next fight against Paiva for that reason, because I really do want to see this fight. In fact, I would actually make the argument that for the majority of MMA fans, Adrian Yanez, Sean O'Malley will be the first big fight that we're really invested in seeing on Sean O'Malley's end. Because realistically, in every fight up until now, everybody's thought that Sean will win, with maybe the exception of Chito Vera and how that ended with the ankle injury leading to the TKO. With every fight Sean O'Malley's had on the big stage at this point, you know, we've been very comfortable in saying, oh, O'Malley's going to run through him, O'Malley's going to beat him, O'Malley's going to embarrass him. And with the greatest of respect, I really, really respect the guy Chris Moutinho as well. You know, that fight was no different either. So my point is, I really want to see this fight happen because I will be very, very invested in it. And I'm really intrigued to see how O'Malley does. because be under no illusion, if this fight happens, it's a very clear step up for O'Malley.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it'll also be cool to watch two of the standouts from the Contender Series going up against each other
For
in the
sure.
same division and seeing who comes out on top. O'Malley has his own arguments about why he's taken unranked and unnamed opponents so far. He says it's because he's going to get paid the same amount because of his contract if he fights someone super high up in the rankings or someone who's not ranked. So that's his business move, and I can't argue with him too much. But it is, if you're that kind of level of fighter, you should be fighting someone close to your level or equal or better or something like that if you want to move up.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And this has been the big issue I've had with Sean O'Malley. Realistically, a lot of people have tried to sort of swipe at Sean O'Malley for different reasons, whether it's his personal lifestyle, his friendships with certain music figures. I'm not going to get into that now because that's not my business.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. Really, my only criticism of Sean O'Malley has been his choice of opponent, because he's fought people that everybody would expect him to beat. It's like Floyd Mayweather all over again.
Exactly. You mentioned that.
Yeah, and that's my only issue with O'Malley. As soon as he starts fighting opponents at his level, he'll actually get a bigger fan base, because as aesthetically pleasing perhaps as a fight like Chris Moutinho was, where we see a record amount of strikes being thrown, no one really wants to see one guy absolutely smashing the living shit out of the other. Yep. We actually want to see a back and forth fight. We want to see someone who has the ability to fight back against him. So yep. Again, I think you actually made a really good point there tonight, and I do agree with it. I don't hate this from Sean O'Malley from a business perspective, because he's looking after himself. And if those are the terms of the contract he signed, then good on him if that is yep. the case. I'm just saying it's not a fan-winning move, and it's not a sports-pleasing move either from O'Malley. So he's got to be very careful to balance this. Otherwise, he will start to lose his fan base at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. It takes two to tango in any situation, and he needs a dance partner, and Yanez is going to be that guy. So, yep, let's leave it at that. Then we had another bantamweight fight. Ronnie Yaya, 38-year-old veteran, taking on Kang Kyung-ho. When the fight started, Kang was just out punching Ronnie Yaya. Ronnie Yaya actually went down a bunch. I don't know why Kang would always leap in to try to finish him on the ground, because that's where Yaya is an expert at. I mean, that was such a bad game plan from Kang, because every time they stood up and kickboxed, he would put him on his ass. Let him get up and do it a couple more times. You've won the fight. Why do you want to wrestle or grapple with a guy like Ronnie Yaya? Why do you want to get close to him? Yaya invited him in, and then in rounds 2 and 3, he actually got a couple of takedowns when, once again, Kang threw kicks, so he just caught the kicks and took him down. Stayed on top, got his back, and clearly won the round. Yaya, I believe, broke some record for most takedowns in a bantamweight division, so congratulations for that. But yeah, I mean, 2-1, clear fight to Ronnie Yaya.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's kind of funny because I obviously, being where I am in the world, I watch all of my fight action on BT Sport, and my app actually completely crashed for the next 2 fights. So I didn't get it back working again until about halfway through the Chiesa Brady fight. So unfortunately, I can't offer much analysis on the actual flow of the fights. I did see the highlights though, and pretty much you're spot on with everything you've said tonight. It happened exactly as it did. Record number of takedowns, which was very, very impressive, and pretty much as clear a 2-1 decision as you will ever see in any fight. Yep.
I mean, you know what I was thinking during the fight? I believe Kang's from Korea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And DC would keep saying on the mic, why are you, like, just let him up, when he would knock him down, or when Yaya would go down or anything, like I said, to avoid the grappling. And maybe he doesn't know how to speak English. Maybe if he did know how to speak English, he could hear DC at the Apex and make a change, like some of the fighters have, communicated with the commentators in that way. That would have been cool to watch. But I don't know if he speaks English or not, but just either way, not the best game plan, because he was winning so clearly on the feet.
Yeah, it's very possible. I mean, there's obviously, it's not something big to get into, but a lot of fighters have that issue sometimes.
Yeah.
Weili Zhang speaks okay, simple enough English.
Yeah.
To her credit, it's very difficult to
Trying.
learn
She's trying.
from that
I'm
culture.
just saying that was just a thought that came into me.
Oh
No
yeah, yeah.
issue there. I mean,
No,
it's
you're
just like
absolutely
something
right.
funny to think about.
No, definitely. I mean, I think when you see guys like Khabib and Khamzat Chimaev, especially, who understand that sort of level of English,
Yeah.
it's very funny when they do get it. But if those guys do get it, it could actually be very beneficial to them as well,
Yep.
especially like you said in the Apex. But they'll get the hang of it.
Yeah.
They're good enough to be a professional fighter, so trust me, I'm the last person to criticize them on anything.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's just been like such awesome moments with like limited fans or no fans in the arena. Like Dustin Poirier telling Hooker to listen to Bisping and Kevin Holland with all his exchanges. And I mean, I just thought that could have been another cool thing, like, if he would have actually listened to him and worked on it.
And Holloway saying he's the best boxer in the
Exactly.
UFC.
That's one of the best moments ever. So, yep, all good stuff in like the empty or limited arenas. Well, we'll move on to Joanne Calderwood and Tyler Santos at flyweight. I might say Joanne Wood because she married her coach recently. But unfortunately, Tyler Santos was too good for her. She knocked her down a couple of times and then choked her out in the very first round. The only finish from 10 fights the whole night. So Tyler Santos, great job. She definitely moves up in the rankings and maybe fights Irene Aldana next. I think she'll. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong division that I had in mind. But I think she moves up and she's going to do really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this was the fight I can only catch the highlights of because BT issues. Not going to go into that. Just gets you mad, basically. But yeah, I have to admit, I thought Joanne Wood now, just to make sure I got that correct. Calder would hold the Calder, I guess. Yes, Joanne, I thought would actually win this because she's looked very good in her last few fights. But massive credit to Taya Santos. This is a much bigger upset than I think she'll give herself credit for.
Yep.
Joanne Wood is a very big name in that division, and she's always around the championship picture because it is somewhat limited at the top. But she's a big name within that, and that's what matters at the end of the day. Taya Santos looked really good, especially in the feet. Those couple of knockdowns were vicious, and probably a lot of fighters in that division they would have knocked out fully. But to go down in the ground and to get the submission is arguably even more impressive than scoring the knockdown on its own. So huge credit to Taya Santos. She's a very technical fighter. Her stand-up is really, really good. And she could be a problem for a lot of those ladies around the upper echelons of that title picture.
Exactly.
So,
I just pull up the rankings. Sorry to cut you off, but I
yep,
just pull up the rankings and Joanne Wood was 5 and Taya was 10 at the time. I think. Yeah, so that's a big step up. She moves into the top 5 now, where we got Jennifer Maia, Lauren Murphy, Keelan Chookagian, Jessica Andrade. Obviously, the champ Valentino seems pretty untouchable, but besides that, she'd be very competitive against the other top 5 ladies.
Absolutely, yeah. I especially think. So who did you say is in the top 5 again? Chookagian, Maia.
Chookagian, Maia, Andrade, Lauren Murphy.
I especially think in the Lauren Murphy and Jennifer Maia fights, Taya Santos would be really competitive.
Yeah.
I actually think by the first quarter of next year, you could be looking at her in the podium of women's flyweight. Yep. I think she could very much occupy that number 3 spot based on her skill.
I definitely agree. And I mean, they need new challenges for Valentina. So she's only 1 or 2 max fights away from a title shot.
Oh, she's too good. If she gets 2 finishes in her next 2 fights, she will be in there against Valentina in her third fight. I'm with that.
Yeah, I'd even say 1 finish because Valentina's fought Andrade, Chookagian, Murphy, and Maia. All of the top 4 ladies at the moment. Joanne Wood moved out, and I'm guessing Taya Santos will come in. So she's fought 4 of the 5. Once she gets a win over any of those ladies, I think she's right in there.
Yeah, she probably has enough clout to call for it, absolutely. Yep. I think for Taya Santos, she can approach it one of 2 ways. If she wants to go straight for the title, 1 win, I think that's a very fair position to be in, and I think it's a very realistic position as well. I think if she wants to build up perhaps her experience at the higher of the division, I think maybe 2 fights could be a better call than just the one and going straight into the shot. I especially think if you fight someone as skilled as Jennifer Maya and as big as Caitlin Chikagian, and if you can win both of those fights, I think you're in a pretty good position.
Yeah.
So if I were to hire Santos, those are the 2 fights I would pick. And if I win both of them, I'm calling for the title shot most undisputably.
And we can both agree we're all staying away from Jessica Andrade. So.
Yeah, I ain't saying nothing.
Yeah.
I don't want the smoke from
yeah,
her.
she's way too dangerous. So good, perfect assessment, I think, of how she could move up. We'll move on to the co-main event. We had Mike Chiesa taking on Sean Brady. Sean Brady obviously undefeated. He was ranked number 14. And Chiesa, I believe, was, let me see, 6 or 7. Right? Chiesa he was at 6. So Chiesa just dropped one of Vicente Luque, did really well before that. What did you think? What did you think of the fight?
Dude, Sean Brady's the real deal. Mm-hmm. That's really the only thing you can take away from this fight. You know, absolutely hammered Michael Chiesa, which to be honest with you, I did think Sean Brady would win. I didn't think it would be as dominant as it was. You know, he out wrestled a really good wrestler in Chiesa, looked very composed on the ground and looked really good on the feet as well. To be honest with you, I would make the argument for 30-27 for Brady. I think it was probably 2-1 for most judges, but I think you could make the argument at least that there might have been enough for him to win all 3 rounds. But that's a topic for another day on the issue of scoring and such. But yeah, really, really impressed with Sean Brady. To jump from his number 14 straight up to number 6 and dominate the number 6 welterweight in the planet, it doesn't get much more impressive than that. Sean Brady, the hype's real, and he is very much here to stay in the top 10 of welterweight as well.
Yeah, that was an absolutely massive win, especially looking at the rankings and the skill level of Chiesa. Because Chiesa, like you said, top-class wrestler, grappler, and he was able to take him down, I believe, 4 or 5 times during the course of the fight. I do think that Chiesa won the last round and was doing Mike was doing really well with his striking, but he just didn't have as much confidence in his striking. I think he doesn't think he's that good at striking, but I think he's better than what he thinks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Because he was landing the better shots. He bloodied Brady's nose up from round 1, but then every time he got taken down, he wasn't able to do much, which shows you a lot about Sean Brady, about how strong and how smart of a grappler he is. I guess Brady got to work on his cardio, because that 3rd round, I think if the fight lasted 2 to 3 more minutes, I think Chiesa would have finished him. I really believe that, because he was so tired. And because Chiesa was able to land a big slam on him, or a big takedown on him in the last probably 30 seconds of the fight, which would have been impossible at the start of the fight. So if he can work on that cardio and everything, I think he's a fantastic fighter. He said that he's the best grappler in the division. I think he's one of the best, not the best, because you've got Colby, Burns, and obviously Usman up top of that division. But a huge step for Sean Brady. Chiesa also, I think it was a great showing for him too. He just met a better grappler, but his hands, like I said, I thought they looked great. If he's more confident and keeps going forward and he's a little smart about it, I think he beats a lot of people in that division.
Yeah, I very much agree with you. And I think the first point that you made is probably the biggest point to take out of this for Michael Chiesa. He's definitely a better striker than he thinks he is. And, you know, we remember his first few fights in the UFC where his stand-up game was very, very poor. And he's come on a world of difference since those first fights. He looks really good on his feet. I think personally for Michael Chiesa, since the Vicente Luque fight, it's almost like that sapped his confidence from his ground game, because he realized that he can be submitted on the ground, whereas he is normally the one who is the anaconda when the fight hits the deck.
Yeah.
So I think for his next fight, regardless of who that ends up being against, I think if he invests a little bit more time into that kickboxing and into that stand-up, I think Michael Chiesa could be a real problem for a lot of guys whose stand-up game is definitely not as good. Sean Brady, I don't really have to cover again, because I think you especially have covered his situation really well. But for Michael Chiesa, even though he's lost, I think there's definitely a lot of positives to take for him.
Yeah. Sean Brady said he'd like to fight the winner of Wonder Boy and Bilal. I like that call out. But I do think in that fight, I do think Wonder Boy is going to beat Bilal, and then Wonder Boy is going to, if he stays on, because Wonder Boy is old now, I think Wonder Boy beats Sean Brady too. But we'll see when it plays out. We'll see what Sean has in store for that, because Wonder Boy struggled a little bit against Burns. But I mean, that's definitely a good call out, because Chiesa was 6, Wonder Boy's 5 right now, and if he can get the winner, he'll be moving up in good time without touching the people like Leon and Gilbert and Colby, who are a huge step up.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yep. I actually think a fight along the lines of Bilal Muhammad, Sean Brady could actually be very beneficial. Yeah. I think you make a couple of really good points about Wonder Boy. You know, I think he's 38 now, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's 38, and he still looks really good. So if he beats Sean Brady and then retires before there's a rematch, you know, Sean Brady's growth at welterweight would always be stunted by the knowledge that he couldn't get past Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Yeah. Whereas I think with someone like Bilal Muhammad, especially if it's a bit like Taya Santos all over again at flyweight, if you're looking to build up experience and relevancy in the upper echelons of your division, taking on a guy who's been there for a while but who's suited to your sort of style, that's a very smart move in my opinion. And I think especially with Bilal Muhammad, who is very much of the kickboxing variety, a fight against Sean Brady could be very beneficial for Brady. It would solidify his probably number 6 or 7 position now.
Yep.
And he would have taken a big name off at welterweight as well. So if I'm Sean Brady, I'm watching the Wonder Boy fight very closely, but that would most likely be who I have my eye on.
Yep, for sure. So great call out from him. And I agree with pretty much everything you said. Every time we talk about Wonder Boy and his age, it just pisses me off so much because he had 2 chances to beat Tyron Woodley at the time, and he couldn't get past him. I can't fucking believe it.
Dude, if he'd have been more confident in that first fight, the entire course of welterweight history would be different. I am convinced.
Especially because Wonder Boy is so likable and such an awesome dude compared to Woodley, which I'm not going to say anything, but he's not a big fan favorite. Come on.
No, but he never was, really.
Yeah, never. Exactly. Never was. That's why, like, Wonder Boy had 2 chances to beat Tyron and couldn't get it done. So frustrating. Every time I think about his age. He's 38. No more title shots, probably.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's actually over for Wonder Boy yet. Maybe this is being a tad optimistic. I don't know, but I will throw it out there. You know, if he gets a really good knockout over Bilal, gets back into a top 5 fight, you know, maybe not Gilbert Burns, but someone like Gilbert Burns, and he wins that as well, it might not be as over as you think it is. I still think stylistically, Stephen Thompson is the most difficult matchup for someone like Kamaru Usman.
Yeah.
And I can't remember, it's actually gone from my head now, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Leon Edwards that said it, and he is right. Kamaru's fallen in love with his striking game now.
Yeah, Leon
and I
said
think
that, right?
I think he's almost in danger of getting to the point that he thinks he's a boxer and he's not. So if someone like Wonder Boy catches Usman in that moment where he thinks he's a better striker than he is and he tries to strike with a karate fighter, you know, we've seen stranger wins happen.
Yep.
We've seen Michael Bisping knock out Luke Rockhold. We've seen Matt Serra beat George St. Pierre. I'm just saying if the stars can align in 2022, crazy things can happen. Who knows?
Yeah, well, it really made me super hopeful, so let's hope that happens. And
Wonder Boy, if you're watching this, get the job.
We love you. That's it. All right, so that was the co-main event. Very good fight. And Sean Brady obviously comes out on top. Then for the main event, we had Keelin Viera taking on Miesha Tate. This was a great fight. I had Keelin Viera take it 3-2 because of the damage she caused to Miesha Tate. Miesha's face was a wreck at the end of the night. So good on Keelin Viera. She got a main event against a huge name in Miesha Tate, pioneer of women's MMA, and she won a very, very well fought fight. Maybe I think she could have pushed a little more, but who cares? She won, and she did it not super comfortably. It was a competitive fight, but she showed what she had in her. Arsenal, and then she was able to get the win. Miesha Tate, great performance as well. I mean, it's not easy to come back after 1,000 days of not fighting, having kids, and this and that. It is a very respectful thing she did, and she fought really well too. I think the best part about Tate was her post-fight interview. She said that, I had fun even though I got beat up, and that's what we're here for. So she's enjoying herself, and I believe she's been speaking a lot of truth since she's come back into MMA. Good for her.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to disagree with anything you've said. Miesha Tate's a legend already, super likable, super lovable, and always a great fighter as well, always brings it no matter who she's fighting against. In terms of the actual fight, it was a very clear decision for Ketlen Vieira. I actually think Ketlen Vieira's only weakness in this fight was being starstruck by who she was fighting against.
Yeah.
If this had been any other woman not named Miesha Tate, she probably would have knocked her out in the third or the fourth round because she would have been more confident in her striking and she would have finished the job. Now, I've got to give a lot of credit to Miesha Tate here because there was a very, very clear size disparity. The reach was a very difficult thing for Miesha to overcome, and she struggled throughout the fight to do that. She was having to take 2 or 3 steps in to try and land the 1-2 to try and get something off against Ketlen Vieira. And realistically, all Ketlen Vieira had to do, I think DC said it in commentary actually, all she had to do was keep pumping that right hand with the jab because it was landing every time she threw it. Miesha Tate just didn't have enough to get past that jab, slip inside and do something. Like you said, her face was beaten up by the end of the fight, and it showed that was mostly jab work with a couple of really good hooks and one really nasty uppercut as well. Mm-hmm. So credit to Ketlen Vieira. Her boxing and her kickboxing was really, really good in the fight. Hell of a lot of respect to Miesha Tate, of course, and nothing less. Always brings it every fight. She got a takedown, which was really, really good. Looked super composed against the octagon and on the ground. Unfortunately, just couldn't do anything with it. Ketlen Vieira was just far too big to be kept down. So credit to both the ladies. Both put on an amazing fight. Ketlen Vieira very much launches herself up to the next level at women's bantamweight. But I don't think this is it for Miesha Tate at all. She put on a really, really impressive performance against one of the brightest young stars at women's bantamweight. And I think she's here to stay for as long as she wants to. Like you said perfectly, she loves it. You can tell she's here because she enjoys it. And if she's here because she enjoys it, then you see the best version of Miesha Tate. So more power to her. I hope she keeps going, and I hope she keeps progressing as well, because I think there's a lot more for her to give.
Yeah, there are plenty of fights for Miesha in the top 10 or top 15 at bantamweight. Like Aspen Ladd, Yana Kunitskaya, I think all those are very competitive and very winnable for Miesha Tate. So if she wants to go on, I'm sure the UFC will keep her on because she's such, like you said, so lovable to the fans and so nice to work with, I'm guessing. Ketlen Vieira also, obviously great performance. She showed her, mostly her striking and how she can maintain that distance. I liked the game plan coming out of that corner. They said don't initiate the grappling at all, which worked perfectly for her because, like you said, when they got close, Tate was able to get her down and score some points off of that. I think Ketlen Vieira has plenty of options as well, but I think Irene Aldana will be the way to go because Aldana is an awesome boxer, kickboxer as well. She has had some issues with weight, so we don't know if she's going to fight at 135 anymore. If not, Juliana Pena maybe could be a good option as well, but she's fighting for the belt right now, so we'll see. I think Holly Holm is too good still, and so is Germaine for Ketlen Vieira. That's a huge step up.
Yeah, there's definitely a very interesting list of potential options for Ketlen Vieira. For Miesha Tate, I really like the Aspen Ladd shout because she's actually fighting someone her size and her frame, and she's fighting a wrestler as well. So I would actually give Tate the advantage in that fight, based on skill and based on experience. I love that shout tonight, I really do. For Ketlen Vieira, this is where it gets a little bit tricky because I think we both very much agree that Irene Aldana would be the perfect next opponent. But I think in her last 2 fights, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's her last 2, she struggled quite badly with missing weight.
Yep.
So she will very likely be forced to go up to 145 if she can't make 135 or 136, obviously if it's a non-title fight.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to work out where to go from there because the options are limited. You know, Juliana Pena, as you said, is fighting Amanda Nunes for the title. So it really leaves you with Holly Holm or Jermaine Durandamy. And I think if you're looking for her to really take the next step, I think you're probably looking at Holly Holm, because if you can pass that elite kickboxing test, then you are where you belong. And the thing is, as well, with young fighters, there's only so much feeding and there's only so much progression you can give them before they have to go up. You know, there comes a point where you can't keep going down to fight fighters just to get experience for when you go up. Sometimes the best way to prepare for going up is just going up.
Yeah.
So if I had to lay out the next 3 fights, assuming it goes the way Ketlin Viera wants it to, I would give her Holly Holm. If she wins that, give her Jermaine Durandamy. And then if she can beat Jermaine Durandamy, definitely give her a title shot against Amanda Nunes. You know, there's only so much cotton wool wrapping you can give fighters. If she's good, you've got to give her the chance to fight the best as well. That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
So I think Ketlin Viera is for real, and that's what I would do.
Yeah, I'd say either Holly or either Jermaine. You get past one, you get a title shot. I wouldn't put you through that bad of, because Miesha Tate's a big name as well, you know, to build off.
Yeah, that's
like
fair.
If Juliana Pena is ranked number 4 and she's getting a title shot going 2-2 in her last fights, Ketlin Viera should absolutely, if she beats Holly Holm or Jermaine, get that title shot, which is...
Yeah, I got to be honest as well, in this whole Juliana Pena point, there's no way she should be fighting for the title.
Yeah.
The only reason she's getting the shot is because she's
fought everybody.
Yeah, the only reason is because she's been mouthing off in interviews and because Amanda has literally beaten everybody in that division. And on this point, because it's a very relevant point to mention this, Juliana Pena, why would you piss off Amanda Nunes? Nunes is a killer when she's happy. Why do you want to face the worst version of her? I don't know. I don't understand it at all.
No, I'm completely with you. It's like, you know, you don't do that to the best fighter by far in your division. And, you know, I was going to make the point that I hate to say it, that in the women's divisions, you get title fights way quicker than the men's. Like,
oh, definitely.
If Leon Edwards is on a 9-fight win streak or an 8-1 draw or 1 no contest, he would have had 2 title fights 2 or 3 title fights already if he was in any of the women's divisions with those kinds of wins. 4. If not 4 even. Because, I mean, it's just how it is, because they only have to get past 1 or 2 fights and they get a title shot. And that's just how it is, because there's not enough depth in those divisions at all. Because, I mean, can't say anything. Women's MMA was just starting in the UFC not too long ago, like everything else. And women generally don't tend to go into mixed martial arts or fighting sports and stuff. It's not a knock on anyone, but it's just what it is, that they don't have to go through 5 or 10 fights to get a title shot. 2 to 3, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's certainly a fair point to mention, but you know one thing that we do have to do is, and I know you're very conscious of this as well, is that we can't directly compare the two either, because the problem is with the women's divisions, 115, especially flyweight, bantamweight, and
feather.
What am I missing? And featherweight, yes. With I'm missing strawweight, 115, 125, 135. With those 3 divisions, the problem is that you've got a very, very built up middle of the pack, and then you've got the champion. Yeah. It's not like a welterweight or a middleweight where you've got so many fighters who can fight for the title, and you're working through a very clear path to get to the champion. The problem is, because there's no elite but below the champion level, like if this was a pyramid, if we think of women's, let's just take bantamweight as an example. If we take the women's bantamweight division as a pyramid, right? Pyramid graph. You've got the base, which is pretty much, you know, your Yana Kunitskaya, Irene Aldana, so on and so forth. And then you've got the champion. The problem is there's no in-between level of elite fighters, but who aren't at the champion's level. You don't have that sort of litmus test. whereas in the men's divisions you do, and that's why women are getting more title shots than men. It's not their fault. It's just that's the way the division is, and so you've
Yep.
got women's fighters like Jessica Ai, who had one or two fights and then went up and fought someone who was far too good for them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have to be honest, I'm not sure how you fix that or how you get around that. That's just the state of play that it is at the moment. But it's
Yeah.
something Caitlin Viera could take advantage of, most definitely.
I 100% agree that it's nobody's fault. It's just the situation, how it plays out. I think time will fix it. Once more and more women start getting into MMA, which they have, and they're doing really well, especially at the top. So if you keep going, you have better options all around, and then the pyramid will even out, I think, on all levels.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean,
with time.
Yeah, one thing that people do have to keep in mind as well is women's MMA really didn't boom and become what it is until the days of Ronda Rousey, which realistically wasn't until around 2013, roughly. So mainstream women's MMA is only about 8 or 9 years old. So this is why you can't compare it to the men's, because they genuinely aren't comparable. One has been much more developed and experienced than the other is. I think if we come back to this topic in 10, 15 years, it'll be a much more different conversation because the divisions will be evened out and leveled out a lot more. I just think at this moment, it's going through that development phase where you've got, middle of the pack champion, middle of the pack champion.
Yeah.
If even in 5, 6 years, if we revisit this topic, it'll be lower level, middle of the pack, championship material, fought for a title, champion. And that's why the men's divisions are developed so much better, because they have those rungs.
Well,
once we revisit this, it'll be different.
Well, in the men's division too, when MMA first started becoming popular, you'd probably know the champ and a couple more fighters in each division. You probably couldn't list all 10. And that's, I guess, the progression of what's going to happen with the women as well. The champions and one or two contenders that are, that actually can compete with each other. But besides the champion, obviously at 125, 135, 145. But once more and more women start getting into the sport, it will even out and it will balance out. It'll be way more competitive. So
definitely.
That's pretty much what it is. All right, we'll move on to next week. We got another awesome fight night. Actually, really looking forward to this with Rob Font and Jose Aldo headlining. And then Brad Riddle, Rafael Fiziev in the co-main. And Jimmy Crute versus Jamal Hill, which is an awesome fight that we will definitely get into right now. So Crute and Jamal Hill, obviously, both of them coming off losses. Both young men. I think Crute was probably the number one prospect in all of MMA, if I'm not mistaken, in a list that ESPN made last year. So he was a huge name. He fought Anthony Lionheart Smith, who's a top 5 perennial contender, I'd say probably for the last 4 years in the light heavyweight division. So that's a tough task. And he was doing well against him, but then he got kicked on a nerve in his calf, and then that caused the fight to be called off by the ref. Jamal Hill took on Paul Craig in his last fight, and he got armbarred so bad that his shoulder popped out, I believe, or was it his elbow? I think his elbow.
I think it was actually his elbow, yeah.
Yeah, whatever it was super nasty. So both of them are coming off like weird finishes, but both of them are really exciting and young men who like to most likely like stand and bang. So it's going to be a really good one.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's going to be an amazing fight for light heavyweight. With this fight, you do certainly have two of the top young prospects for that division for the future. Jimmy Crute, I'm a big fan of. Loved this fight against Anthony Smith. Obviously that fight ended after the first round because his leg just completely went out. He couldn't stand on it.
Yeah.
Anthony Smith threw such a well-timed leg kick that he just knocked his leg out of commission. But up until that point, Crute was giving as good as he took. Looked clean, looked fast, looked good. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what he does against Jamal Hill. Hill looked all right against Paul Craig, but when the fight hit the deck, the difference was very, very clear to see. The disparity was substantial. And like you said, that armbar I don't know what the medical term is for when your elbow's gone. I don't know if it's broken or displaced or whatever it
Yep.
is, but he hit his elbow. That's how bad that armbar was. And it's taken up until now just for that to recover. So it's going to be a really good fight. I do agree with the bookies odds because they have Jimmy Crute minus 170.
Right.
I think those odds are pretty accurate, and those are what I would put. So I'm really looking forward to this fight, but I would expect Jimmy Crute to get it done on his return.
Yeah, me too. I'm a big fan of Crude as well. I think he's awesome. Like he's a great fighter and he's a great personality as well. So gonna be a banger. Then we have Brad Riddle versus I don't know if it's Riddell or Riddle, to be honest, versus Rafat Fiziev. Fiziev comes from Russia, but he likes the kickboxing rather than the wrestling, unlike the other Russians. And he's
Thank
actually
God.
criticized them, saying that they fight really boring and I'm the exciting one and stuff like that. So that's his style. It is really fun. He throws some beautiful body kicks and he packs a lot of power. Brad Riddle comes from City Kickboxing with Adesanya and Volkanovski, Dan Hooker, and that crew. And I think he's an awesome fighter. He took on Drew Dober last, if I'm remembering correctly, and that was a great stand-up war. And Brad Riddle has some crisp boxing. I think could pay a lot of. He could do really well against Fiziev.
Yeah, I very much agree with you. I think this is a really, really good lightweight fight.
Mm-hmm.
We have number 12 against number 14. So this is a very good fight to see who rounds out the top 10 pretty much.
Yep.
I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, the odds as we're recording this right now are damn near dead even. That tells you all you need to know realistically, ladies and gentlemen. But both guys I'm a very big fan of. Rafael Fiziev, had an amazing fight last time out against Bobby Green, 1-2-1. But you actually mentioned this before we went on air, and you were absolutely correct. His stamina, I think, is a big issue. You know, he faded really badly in that third round against Bobby Green, and you could argue should have been knocked out. To his credit, he was able to last, very good survivalist. But as he creeps up the rankings, that is going to become more apparent and it's going to become more exposed as well. And this is where I think Brad Riddell is going to have his success as well, or Riddell. I'm going to say Riddell. If it's wrong, I apologize.
Yeah.
Whatever. The one thing about Brad Riddell is that his boxing is amazing. As you said, very crisp, very clean. You expect nothing better from City Kickboxing. Guys like Kai Kara France, Israel Adesanya, Hooker, the list goes on and on. His boxing is really, really good, and his cardio is really good as well. And I think that's what's going to be the oncoming of Rafael Fiziev in this fight. I would say the first two rounds will be fairly even. I think Fiziev's boxing is really good, and I think he's definitely going to do some damage to Riddell. But come the third round, I can just see Fiziev tiring again. And one thing about Brad Riddell is that he does not tire. He's able to keep going all fight, pressure. And I think there's a very good chance Riddell can do what Bobby Green didn't, and that is take advantage and finish Rafael Fiziev. Either way, it's a super close fight, and it's going to be a brilliant fight as well. I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah, so am I. I'm super excited. Yeah, I mean, the thing you said about the gas tank, and we were talking about before we started recording, definitely Fiziev has to watch for that, man, because he throws so much power in the first round and a half, first two rounds, that he gets exposed in the third round. Bobby Green's a great boxer, so he was able to touch him up pretty bad in the third round. And maybe that could be, his demise. Like Brad Riddle could really take advantage of that and get his combinations going and possibly put him on his back and finish him. So yeah, super exciting fight. And then the main event is in the bantamweight division. We got Rob Font from the New England Cartel taking on the legend, the King of Rio, Jose Aldo. They're ranked number 4 and 5. And I think that's just a great matchup. Rob Font is a massive opportunity for him. He did really well against Cody Garbrandt, who's also another big name at bantamweight. He sent him down to 125, where he's going to fight a couple of weeks from now. And I think Font has that New England boxing, just like Calvin Kattar and everything. They all, they have the similar styles. Aldo is going to I think he's going to take advantage of that lead leg like he usually does and hammer it. Well, we'll see how it plays with that. I think it's a great matchup and a great fight. Really good opportunity for Font to, get another win off a huge name like Jose Aldo. Aldo's last fight was, who did he fight last?
Pedro Munoz.
Pedro Munoz, and he beat him very clearly. And that was, that just made a statement saying, like, I'm still here and I'm still relevant at bantamweight. So great matchup, and I'm really looking forward to this. What do you think about this
Dude,
one?
I am so hyped for this fight. This is one of my favorite bantamweight fights in probably the last half of the year. And we've seen some killer bantamweight fights in the last 6 months. I'm not even going to mention them. There's been that many, but there have been some bangers. Rob Font, I really, really like. Cody Garbrandt's one of my favorite bantamweights. I'm not going to lie. I love the guy, but Rob Font dominated him, made it look easy as well. He outboxed one of the best pure boxers bantamweight's ever seen. The guy who put Dominic Cruz to the sword when he won the title, which is no mean feat, let me tell you that. Rob Font is just really good. He is out of the New England cartel. He's tough, he's fast, he's strong, and he's just the perfect all-round fighter in many ways. His boxing is really good. His kickboxing is on point. His grappling's perfect. His transition is really, really good. Even his groundwork's solid. We haven't seen him on the ground all that often, but when we have, he's never looked in terrible trouble from what I can remember. Yep. So he's a really good fighter. There's very little more you can say about Rob Font. But then we have Jose Aldo, probably the second greatest featherweight of all time after Max Holloway. The guy is such a special fighter, someone who I've always been a fan of as well. Really love seeing him doing well at bantamweight because he deserves the success. And against Pedro Munoz, he looked really, really good. I kickboxed him, I should say, for 3 full rounds the last time he fought. And I can see him having very good success here against Rob Font as well. I think the big issue in this fight, and you've highlighted it perfectly tonight, is that lead leg. I think both these guys are probably equally as good boxers, so they'll probably cancel each other out in that front. I don't see grappling being a big issue in this fight either, because both guys are really good jiu-jitsu practitioners as well. The big issue comes down to that lead leg of Rob Font and if he can keep it protected, because Jose Aldo is like a lumberjack sniper. He hits it so accurately and so hard, so constantly, and he just takes your leg away from you, forces you to switch stance, and then you're in trouble. If Rob Font can keep that lead leg guarded and protected, he's going to have much more success in this fight. But if Aldo can do what he started to show shades of against Pedro Munoz, chop that leg once or twice, give Font something to think about, something to be concerned about, something to keep backing up on, then Aldo's going to enjoy success in this fight as well. The thing is, my overall point on this basically is this. Both guys will meet in the center of the octagon, and both guys will cancel each other out in a lot of their game because they're both really, really elite fighters. The main issue, the sole issue that determines who will win this fight is who can control that lead leg. If Font can protect it, he's got a better chance of winning. If Aldo can chop it early, he's got the chance.
Yep, that's a very fair assessment of both those guys and how the fight could play out. Yeah, Aldo, I think, looked awesome against Pedro Munoz, who's also another tough opponent. He didn't get touched, I feel like, in the entire fight. He was just so smart and so crisp with all his movements and all his striking. Yeah, I just remember that Font had knocked out Marlon Moraes with a jab before he beat Cody Garbrandt. So that's another impressive win under his belt. And one or two more, he's a fresh opponent for Petr Yan or Aljamain. And I think he could compete with those guys as well. But obviously first he has to get past the legend and Jose Aldo. So, yeah, those fights are next week. I believe they're on ESPN in America, just on TV. So that's a pretty cool thing for the UFC. I'm sure they're really excited and really worried about it. Then what else do we have on the agenda today? Oh, yeah. So Iaquinta on his podcast said that he might consider retiring and most likely will after his TKO loss against Bobby Green. I say TKO loss because when he was talking about retiring, he said, that's the first time I've given up. Like, he wasn't knocked out, but He was like, I just don't want to be here and I don't want to do this anymore. So he basically gave up and got the TKO. Taking nothing away from Bobby Green, that was an awesome performance, like we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, I believe. And he did his job. But Iaquinta has been a mainstay in the 155 division, barring the past year or a couple of years. For Khabib for the belt, some people say that was Khabib's toughest test in recent time. And arguably it was. So yeah, Iaquinta, great career. I believe he sells houses and stuff. So go on with that. And if you retire, congrats and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a unique topic to talk about because we're not in Iaquinta's mindset, so it's very hard to say what he wants to do and what he doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest with you, I think there is a good case for retiring. He's had an unbelievable career, some legendary fights. Fought Khabib, took him all 5 rounds and didn't make it easy for him either. People do forget that. But in that Bobby Green fight, it's a bit like Miesha Tate, Ketlin Viera, but worse for Iaquinta. The range was so obvious from the beginning. He was just swinging wildly, never really had much success, and then got finished with a beautifully vicious 1-2 from Bobby Green as well. In fact, I never like saying it, but it was pretty easy work for Bobby Green, if we're being totally honest.
It was.
And it's not even just that, his movement, he looked slower, he didn't look fully focused in a way. And like you said there perfectly, he said it's the first time that he's ever quit and give up on himself. And the thing is, this is a dangerous game to do that as well. This isn't snooker, this isn't football where your livelihood is on the line if you lose focus and if you're heading fully in the game. If you're heading in the game, that's usually the signal to get out. And if it is, I really do wish him nothing but success, and I congratulate him. He's had a great career. He's been a mainstay in the top 10 of lightweight for years now. He's been a really good fighter, always been really tough, and he's always lived up to his nickname of Rage and Iaquinta. In fact, it's a very appropriate nickname for him.
You boo me.
Exactly. So if this is the end, which I would hazard that it is the end, like you, I echo your sentiments fully. I wish him nothing but the best of success with his real estate business, and I congratulate him on a great career too.
Yeah, I like the Miesha Tate comparison you brought up. That was in the fight, but after the fight and mentality-wise, it was the exact opposite of Miesha Tate because he said he wasn't enjoying it anymore and he actually hated being in that position. So yeah, I mean, if he retires, it's completely understandable and good luck. We can move on to the top 5 of the week. This week, our top 5 is going to be the top 5 dream matchups for the rest of 21 and the year 2022. Some of these matchups have already been made by the UFC, and some others are ones that we've thought of ourselves and we'd like to watch come the next year. All right, so we'll start with number 5 if Keelin wants to go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. As Tanaay said, some of our fights that we're going to say have officially been made, but some of them are basically if we were matchmaker and what we really want to see happen in 2022. So I'm really excited to hear what you've got as well tonight. And with that, let's go straight to number 5. And my number 5 is a fight that's already been made, and it's Ciryl Gane, Francis Ngannou for the heavyweight title. Now, there's a very good reason I've picked this fight, not just because there would be animosity or anything like that between Ngannou and Ciryl Gane. I think Ciryl Gane is probably the most technical heavyweight that we've ever seen. The guy's striking skill is on a different level. His wrestling is solid, and no one's really looked like they've come close to troubling him in the fights that he's had so far. That Alexander Volkov fight, a lot of people thought that Volkov being 6'7", 6'8", would finish Ciryl Gane. Wasn't an issue whatsoever to him. He broke him down perfectly. Boxing was on point, controlled distance really well against a longer fighter. And I think Ciryl Gane's going to be the toughest test that Francis Ngannou has ever had. I stand fully by that. Gane is able to use striking like very few heavyweights can. And Ngannou can't go out there and be sloppy. He can't go out and try and throw wild haymakers because Ngannou can actually counterbox and he can hurt him with that. He can use that space. He can move in, he can move out, and he can use it perfectly. So it's impossible to say at this point who will win. That's not what this is about. But for me, my number 5 of what I'm looking forward to seeing, Cyril Gane versus Francis Ngannou.
Yeah, I love the point you made about the Volkov fight because that was his that was a massive test for Cyril Gane, and he
Very
passed
much
it
so.
without any questions, without taking any damage. Dominated a much taller guy for 5 straight rounds. I really expected, like most people, that Volkov was gonna touch him up and beat him, especially with that size that Volkov has, and he's a great striker himself as well. But Gane just made it look so easy, in and out, in and out, didn't get touched. So, and did the same thing against a dangerous Derek Lewis. So Cyril Gane, man, awesome. Very well rounded, probably the most skilled fighter in that heavyweight division.
Agreed.
At number 5, I have Amanda Nunes versus Valentina Shevchenko 3. We talked about this earlier in the podcast that the women's divisions don't have that much competition, especially those two champions up top. The unfortunate thing is that they've already fought twice, and Amanda's come out on top both times. Although Shevchenko could have taken the second fight in a lot of people's opinions. So I think if they keep winning a couple more fights in their divisions, I mean, who else are they going to fight but each other? They meet again at 135, and I think it's super competitive once again. And I think this fight will decide who the clear women's GOAT is. As of now, it's Nunes. Even though Valentina Shevchenko is one of my favorite fighters, as we talked about last week, I think Nunes is the GOAT, but just because of the 2 wins she has over Shevchenko, but Shevchenko has a solid chance and the best chance of getting past her. That's a fight we all have to watch one more time.
Yeah, dude, I love that pick so much. And if this were any other kind of list, that would probably be much higher as well on a combined list as well.
Yeah.
So I'm a really big fan of that. Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko could not be any more poised going into a potential third fight. I mean, officially it's 2-0 Nunes, I understand that. But in my mind, it's 1-1 because Shevchenko won the second fight 3-2 very clearly for me personally. So I think it makes a lot of sense to happen eventually, as well as the fact that they've both cleaned out their divisions multiple times at this point too. I got to be honest, my views on Valentina Shevchenko and Amanda Nunes sound ridiculous and very paradoxical, but I think they actually make sense as well. I think Amanda Nunes is the best female striker we've ever seen in terms of sheer shock and awe power in boxing. But I think Valentina Shevchenko is the best mixed martial artist we've ever seen. I don't think Nunes is as well rounded as Shevchenko is. I think her one weapon is probably better than Shevchenko's, but I think Shevchenko has more weapons, and I think that's the big difference between the two. It's why we love seeing them both fight, and it's why we want to see them throw down one last time.
Yeah, so you brought that point up of one being the more powerful, bigger, intimidating woman, and the other one being the more skilled, and that's once again like Cyril Gane and Francis Ngannou. So
yeah, it actually
it's
is
a similar comparison to that. One's the scary like knockout artist, and the other one's just a technical machine who just gets her wins that way. So yeah, super exciting fight. What do you got at number 4?
At number 4, I've actually got your favorite fighter of all time. It's Max Holloway, Alex Volkanovski, number 3. And, there's a lot of reasons I could have this at number 4. None that I really need to go over, but the big one is this. Volkanovski looked amazing against Brian Ortega, and Max Holloway looked brilliant against Yair Rodriguez as well. And the truth is with Holloway, it's a little bit like the women's divisions all over again. He's beaten and faced everybody in his division. So there's, he can't go down. He can really only go up. And Volkanovski's beaten Ortega, and the next in line naturally just is Max Holloway. So not only is this a fight that I want to see, I think this is a fight we will see.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, we discussed when Max is fighting that, he was talking that 155, he might move up in weight or something. But we said, let's settle business here with Volkanovski and get that belt and then challenge some people up at 155. I think that's a great plan. And he's earned his rematch despite losing twice to Volkanovski, although the second one could have gone either way. A lot of people
think it's a bit like Shevchenko Nunes.
Yeah, exactly. So many weird comparisons in these lists.
How does this happen?
Yeah. So my number 4 is so Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier are gonna take each other on. They're gonna fight each other in December, last pay-per-view of the year. I'd like to see the winner of that face Justin Gaethje. I think the first Poirier Gaethje fight was amazing. It was fight of the night. They both beat the shit out of each other. And then I think Charles Oliveira, although he's a champion, is one of the most underrated fighters of the division, which is a weird thing to say because he holds the belt. People keep underestimating him and he keeps coming out on top and he finishes everybody too. It's not just that, he's dragging out decisions. He's choking you out or he's knocking you out as well. So whoever takes that fight in December between Poirier and Oliveira, I think Gaethje's the rightful next title shot over Islam Makhachev. And I think that Gaethje, every time he steps into the octagon, it's always people getting beat up and it's such a good fight. And I think that's the fight that I'd like to see made in 2022.
Yeah, I love that a lot. And I don't even have to add my own justifications because you've justified it perfectly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, love that pick a lot. My number 3 is another hypothetical, and it's Yair Rodriguez versus Edson Barbosa at featherweight. These are two of my favorite featherweight fighters. Rodriguez earned so much respect from that Holloway fight. And Barbosa is just one of the most brilliant strikers that we've ever seen. Whether he wins, whether he loses, he's always extremely entertaining. And I think if you put these two guys together to headline a fight night in 2022, I think you're getting a really strong fight of the year contender there. Both guys come to bang. Not going to be any wrestling involved. They're going to meet in the middle of the octagon and kick the holy shite out of each other until one guy falls and one guy can stand up just about. So that's my number 3. Yair Rodriguez, Edson Barbosa, fight of the year contender for 2022.
Absolutely. At featherweight, they're super entertaining. That will determine who moves up and who's closer to fighting the champion at the time. If it's Max or Volk or whoever it is, I think they'll earn a nice shot if they could get past each other. So
especially definitely with a big win, I agree with you.
And also, it has all the makings of a fight of the year contender. So why not make it 5 rounds and put it on a fight of the night? Perfect. At number 3, I'd like to see the rivalry finally get, settled in the octagon between Jorge Masvidal and Colby Covington. I would love to see that on the Ultimate Fighter show so they can hang out with each other for a month or two. A lot of people have been talking about this. I love the idea. These guys used to be best friends, training partners, live together, things like that. Colby Covington turned on Masvidal. Now they have a big rivalry and both constantly talking shit about each other. So imagine seeing that for 2 months, every week on your TV, their fighter against your fighter. It's just going to be awesome. And finally, when they meet in the octagon, Masvidal is always there to take your head off, and Colby Covington is a dog. So much skill, especially with the grappling and now with the hands as well. And he's a top-tier fighter. They're both top-tier fighters at welterweight. So, the animosity is great. The fight style is great. And if we can get it on the Ultimate Fighter, nothing like it. So I'd love to see that fight 2022.
That is an unbelievable shout. I love that so much tonight. And as far as I'm concerned, if that was the next Ultimate Fighter, I think that would probably be the best season of TUF since McGregor and Faber in 2015. I genuinely think it would be because there's legit heat here between Covington and Masvidal. You put those guys together for a month or two, it's a powder keg waiting to explode. There'll be weigh-in controversies. There'll be fights between the coaches, most likely. There'll be MAGA hats if that's what you're into. I don't know. And it would just be an absolute madness. So I think that is the perfect pick. And if that's not TUF, then I'll be deeply, deeply disappointed.
We could get another Chael Wanderlei moment.
Yes.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I can't let you get close.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can't beat it. You can't beat it.
Yeah.
So my number 2 on my list is shockingly not Covington and Masvidal. I'm disappointed in myself that it actually isn't. But it's actually a fight that you've already mentioned, and it's Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira. Now, as we know, this fight's happening at UFC 269 in December of this year, so it just about doesn't meet the cutoff date for 2022, but it is what it is. It's happening anyway. I am so excited for this fight because this really is this is stand-up versus ground, in my opinion. A lot of people talk about Charles Oliveira as being underrated, and that's very true. He is criminally underrated despite being the champion. And, I think the best thing he could have done and the best win he could have got against Michael Chandler was knocking him out. Because if he'd have just submitted Michael Chandler, no one would have been giving him the credit for that hook that he deserves.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the most beautiful left hooks that I've ever seen anybody land. The problem is, I think you're facing the best boxer, a lightweight, Dustin Poirier. And in my opinion, perhaps slightly controversially, I think the best boxer in the UFC right now in Dustin Poirier. And there's a big difference between Michael Chandler's boxing and Dustin Poirier's boxing. And I think if Charles Oliveira can't get this to the ground, then he could be in trouble here. Because I don't even need to tell you how good Dustin Poirier's boxing is. The man puts on a fight of the year contender every time he fights. And that is solely to do mostly with his boxing. So I think we're going to get an unbelievable fight at UFC 269. At the moment, I'm leaning towards Dustin Poirier winning that because of that stand-up game and because of the boxing and the kickboxing. Oliveira is going to make it really tough, be under no illusion. But I think Poirier's boxing is going to get him to the promised land. And I think it's going to be a really, really good lightweight title fight.
Yeah, I think the thing that stood out for me the most, besides the knockout that Oliveira got over Mike Chandler, he won a lot of people over by showing heart because he was the one who got knocked down first. He survived all that, came back to knock out Chandler in round 2. So, yeah, like you said, you can't say enough about Dustin Poirier every time he steps in there. It's always entertaining, always beating the shit out of each other, and he usually comes out on top. So he's a fan favorite. He's got his shine from Conor McGregor by beating him twice this year. And yeah, I'm so excited for that fight. I mean, when Oliveira knocked out Mike Chandler, that was one of the best moments that I've had in the whole year. 2021, that was one of my favorite moments that ever happened. I was on the floor like going nuts, like let's go. I was so hyped. I mean, for a guy like him, it means so much. Like, because you see Darren Till when he lost to Derek Brunson, he put up a picture of Michael Bisping and Charles Oliveira, the guys with 10 plus losses who fought for the belt and won it. So they've really worked their ass off, gotten better over the years, and earned their title. So it's a really huge deal. I know Dustin Poirier is one of the few people who hasn't underestimated Charles Oliveira and understands how dangerous he can be, especially with the submissions and even with the striking now. But like you said, I favor Dustin Poirier a little more to win as well. At number 2 for me, I have John Jones versus the winner of Gane and Ngannou. John Jones, biggest star in the UFC for a few years, especially before Conor came in. He was the biggest name, the youngest champ ever. A lot of people consider him to be the GOAT. Outside of the octagon, he's just the opposite of being the GOAT, but in there, he is spectacular, man. Since he stepped in there, he's never lost. He's lost very few rounds, never lost a fight. And I don't know, going to heavyweight is a big challenge. Like when you think about people going up in weight, like champs in the past, or someone's going up from one weight class to another to fight for a belt, it's very different than when you go up from 205 to technically 265 than if you go from 145 to 155, for example. I mean, they're both super hard and super impressive, but what DC was able to do and what John wants to be able to do is a huge task ahead. And I think if John Jones can get past the dangerous, powerful knockout artist in Ngannou, or one of the best heavyweight skilled fighters that we've ever seen in Cyril Gane, I think that puts him clear of everybody else in the GOAT conversation, and that's why it's such a special fight.
Yeah, it is an amazing fight, and as a fan, I certainly hope it does happen. I don't know if it will, though. But then again, that's not really the question that we're asking here. We're asking what we'd like to see, and that's definitely a fight that we would like to see. I think if you get John Jones with his head screwed on for once, I think it could absolutely happen. Yeah. And I don't just mean outside of the octagon stuff, because that's a podcast episode in its own right.
Yeah.
In the octagon as well, he's been really sloppy in his last few fights. The Dominic Reyes fight, I think there's a very strong argument that he lost
Yep.
3-2. He looked really, really bad in that fight. The Thiago Santos fight, he took out both of Santos's ACLs, and Santos
still couldn't do anything. Yeah.
And he still couldn't put him away, and Santos still put up an argument, at least for winning as well. Mm-hmm. So before John, well, he's already done it, so this is probably a bit of a moot point, but before he even considers going into the octagon as a heavyweight, he needs to be in the right headspace, and he needs to have worked on his boxing as well. Because if he hasn't, he's in trouble, regardless of who he faces, whether it's Volkov, Gano, or Ngannou. Now, if he does it, it's very impressive, but I'd love to see that fight for sure. I think that's a great shout. And now it's time for number one. What is the one fight I want to see the most in 2022? It is the highlight Justin Gaethje against Islam Makhachev. Now, on the other podcast that I do, I got into there's a little bit of a difference of opinion, shall we say, on how the lightweight division should be handled. And I said that Islam Makhachev is on his 9-fight win streak. Take how much credit you want out of that or not. But he's on a 9-fight winning streak. And then you've got Justin Gaethje, who's the fight of the year candidate every time he's in the octagon. And I said, in order to determine the true number one contender, let them fight it out. There's no point giving one guy one fight and then one the other. Gaethje's down, Makhachev is down. Need I say much more? Let the battle lines be drawn and let these two guys fight it out in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I love that matchup down the line, but I'm going to argue that Justin Gaethje should just fight for the title. I think he's earned it. And Beneil Dariush, like Gaethje has said himself, is sitting at number 3. So Makhachev fight Beneil. And if you get past him, you get the title shot. But obviously, if they make the Makhachev-Gaethje fight, who is not tuning in, Fantastic fight to make. That'll make, it'll make it more clear of who deserves the title shot, although a lot of us are saying Gaethje should get it off of that Chandler win.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very fair argument as well. And I like the Beneil Dariush point as well, because no one has uttered a word or written about him. Tony Ferguson. The man's gone underground. Yeah. Where is Beneil Dariush? By the way, is he okay?
And in 2020, Beneil Dariush, many are forgetting, gave UFC fans, or just fight fans, one of the best moments of the year. When he had that comeback knockout victory. That was the famous picture of DC, Rogan, and Anik at the commentary booths. They're like, never forget that. That's a huge moment. And that should be, I don't know. Either way, Beneil Dariush, he's on a fight. He's on a certain fight win streak. I can't remember exactly, maybe 4 or 5 at least. And he's beaten Tony Ferguson in his last fight. No easy task. So, yeah, people start calling him out. I think you can build yourself off of Beneil Dariush.
For sure.
And number 1, I have to have, I think, Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz 3. I think anytime McGregor fights, love him or hate him, people are going to tune in. Despite being out for so many years, he still came back and was the number 1 pay-per-view both times this year. He fought in Abu Dhabi and Vegas. And, I mean, that guy's just box office. Nate Diaz, on the other hand, is a superstar himself. Anything he does, everyone tunes in. He's smoking weed, everyone's tuning in. He's going to parties, like he's working out. Everybody's tuning in to see what Nate's up to. Nate Diaz, I think, is the best fight that McGregor could have. I think if he has to Dustin Poirier again, Poirier's going to beat the crap out of him.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you can say that you won that second fight at all. I don't think he won a minute or even 10 seconds of that first round, although it ended unfortunately for him. And in the first fight, Dustin Poirier just outsmarted him with a better game plan and knocked him out. I mean, that's another clear victory as can get for Dustin Poirier. I think Nate Diaz isn't as skilled a fighter as Dustin Poirier, but he's durable. He's a tough matchup. You can count on him to show up every single fight. Look what he did to Leon Edwards. Got beat up for 4 rounds, bloodied up everywhere, and almost won in that 5th round by a clean strike and almost could have knocked him out if the fight lasted a couple more minutes. So McGregor Diaz, the first 2 fights were awesome. Diaz taking the first, McGregor coming back winning the second. I think McGregor will be easy for him to make 170 compared to 155. We don't know how that leg's going to heal up, and I think Diaz will be a good platform. I mean, good fight to see where he stands, because Dustin Poirier, I think, is too elite at this point for Conor
Oh
McGregor.
yeah, by far. That's a great pick, actually. Especially for this being Nate Diaz's last fight of his contract, as I
Right.
understand. I really do want to see the guy get paid because he's given us so much, and I really hope he does get the bag because no one deserves it more than Nate Diaz does. Maybe Tony Ferguson, but they're both on a
Yeah.
similar level anyway. Yeah, that's a really great pick. McGregor's obviously coming off. He'd have to come off Twitter for 25 minutes, which is a tough task in its own right. But he's coming off basically getting an ass whooping from Dustin Poirier for the second time in a row. He didn't win a second of that fight.
Yeah.
Anybody who says otherwise, with respect, you didn't watch the same fight that we
Mhm.
did. Let's not forget, not that this is going to turn into an analysis of that fight, it's simply making the point to go on. Let's not forget, it was McGregor that initiated the clinch because he was getting beat up in the boxing. It wasn't Poirier that initiated it. He finished it, but it wasn't him that started it because McGregor was getting lit up.
Mhm.
So that's neither here nor there. That would be a very good fight, I think. And I suppose from McGregor's perspective as well, he doesn't actually have to deal with the thought of checking any leg kicks against Diaz either.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if Nate was smart, he would throw leg kicks for sure. I just don't think he will, because I don't think he threw a single leg kick in the first two fights. So it's highly unlikely he'll throw one if there is a third fight. And yeah, it'll be a record pay-per-view. People will buy into that in their millions for sure. And for McGregor, it's probably a pretty good target practice fight. For Diaz, all he really has to do is tough it out, and he always has a chance to beat McGregor. So yeah, that's a very good shout. I like that a lot.
Yep. So those were our list of fights we'd like to see the rest of the year and in 2022. Anything else you have on your mind, Keelin?
No, not a great deal tonight. Like last week, I think we've covered a lot. I think we've covered a lot of great stuff there, and I look forward to joining you once again for episode 4.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Keelan's other podcast, the MMA Island podcast with Jack and Hunter, they just crossed 100 episodes, so congratulations to them. I only mentioned this because I got a nice shout out in that episode as well.
Come on.
Yeah, they call me their favorite guests or something like that. So
we did.
Yeah, so I had to pay them back a little bit for that. But no, it's always fun going on there as well. Have a good time, have some great discussions and insights from these guys. They're all great. So check that out as well. And on that note, yeah, check us out as well, man. Like, share, subscribe, like we've been saying. The content's getting better. We're trying to sharpen all our tools, and the betting show is going to be up Thursdays or Fridays. They did really well this week. We didn't post too much about it because there was a time constraint, but we'll be better about that. And you guys just keep following and encouraging us to go, and we'll keep going.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. We really appreciate it. You have any thoughts, any views on what we've talked about, anything you want us to talk about, leave it in the comments below. We'll look at it. We'll get back to you, and we will always, everybody's opinion is always valued. We welcome the feedback. And like I said, I look forward to seeing you all on episode 4.
Yep. 3 more events left in 2021, I believe. Some great cards coming up. 1 pay-per-view, and we're just super excited to get into this stuff. And Keelan, thank you for the time. We'll see you next week.
See you next week tonight. Thank you as always, brother.